Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Sunil Soni, who is the founder of Indian+Family+Business Network, a digital community for next generation leaders in family business. He discovered his passion for the subject when he joined his own family business during his graduating years. After finishing his MBA, he worked in the human resources function of a large, well-diversified family-owned business where he experienced various nuances of Indian family business in a corporate setting. Sunil is passionate about people, business, mythology, and culture. Welcome, Sunil, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Hi, sir. Thank you for having me.
So, Sunil, I was just reading up an article on the history of family businesses. I mean, there are many articles if we search, and if there was one success criteria for looking at whether the business is successful or not, one criteria could be simply longevity or survival. And the statistics said that typically most first generation businesses do survive the second generation, which means definitely they see more than 30 years. And if I were to look at the non-family businesses that have been set up, that statistics today is, if you set up a business now, it is gone in 20 years. They don't exist. So this is very interesting that, family business, apart for the purpose that it is being set, is also a kind of a multi-generational phenomena. And since you work in this space, just let's begin our conversation on that front.
Certainly, sir. And thank you for introducing this subject, because this is something which I really like. So just to put this research in the right context, the way it is understood is when we are talking about family business, essentially it's a business which has been transferred from the founding generation, which could be father or uncle in your family, to the next generation. And any business owner who has this aspiration that they want their business to be led by the next generation from the family, essentially is counted as a family business, though there are different nuances when you get into the detail of it. So as you said, right, I mean, majority, they say 90% of the businesses fail within the first 5 years. And for any founder, that's the story. All the business which are started, majority of them shut down in the first 5 years. So any which ways, for the number of business who make it to the second generation or succeed in the first generation itself are very less. But then once the business is set up, it's created with a lot of hard work, passion, and sacrifice by not only the founder, but a lot of members in the family. Then usually the father or the elder generation has the aspiration that they would want their younger generation to join them and support them in the business. And that's when it becomes a family business. And the statistics are right. 97% of the family businesses fail within the first 3 generations. Though this is a global research, I think here in India, I've seen different cases, but we'll get into that once we speak more about the family business.
I mean, essentially the numbers were, very interesting. They say that 40% of family businesses transition into a second generation. About 13% are passed down successfully to the third generation, while only 3% survive to a fourth or beyond. And interestingly, on a lighter note, it talks about certain folklores around this. And there is a very interesting Brazilian saying on the subject which caught my eye, which says, rich father, noble son, poor grandson. What's your take on that?
That's very true. That's very true. In fact, this saying is there in most of the cultures across the world. Okay. Here in India, we call it in this way. We say, Koti ki umar 60 saal. So a koti meaning a bungalow which is created by the family, it usually lasts for 60 years, because after 60 years, there will be certain issue which will kind of have the family separate. In some of the other cultures, it is found as, father peasant, son playboy, and grandson again peasant. So usually it is, even in a Chinese proverb, it is said that there are very few families who succeed beyond 3 generations. Like the money gets, so the fam- it's a phenomenon which is noticed across the globe. And that is where there's a lot of struggle in terms of understanding this right. How it would be very normal for you to come across situations where brothers, when they grow up, they get married and they have kids. It is a very normal phenomenon when fathers would separate the wealth, give them separate houses, give them separate cars, hand over a business vertical to them or a business function to them. And that's the usual way of society functioning. That if there are misunderstandings, if you're unable to stay together, better get separate. But there is a proven research which talks that there is a certain way to keep the family together. And why to keep them together? Because there is so much which is attached to the profession, to the relationships which the family members share, to to the fulfillment one gets when he creates some sort of a legacy with his family business. So there are a lot of proven benefits around it, but at the same time, it's very difficult for many to recognize that how do you do this in the right way. And if you were to ask me what is one thing which can take care of it, it is primarily how you communicate together and how you make decisions.
But interestingly, in the Indian context, there was a Hindustan Times report, a little old, I think about 2 years old, and I don't think the statistics would be fairly different. It says that roughly 60% of 500 of the largest companies in India are family owned. So there is definitely something that is going right as far as family business in India is concerned. I mean, unlike the professionally owned and managed businesses, there is something that the family businesses have been doing right, at least in the last 2-3 decades, since the Indian economy has kind of opened up, and the next gen, maybe the second generation or probably third generation, has taken education in a global setting. They're probably more aware, and that phenomena seems to be working well. In your experience, how do you see this?
So I would say 100% yes, the research is right. Even in India, around 70% of the GDP is contributed by family businesses. About 90 to 95% of the employment is generated by the family business owners. So the statistics is right. In terms of looking at the story in the past 30 to 40 years, I would say that India has done quite a good work in terms of economic growth. And that is where the reflection is seen in these research as well. So it is the story of my family and as well as many families which I get to meet, because there are very few families 40 years back who used to have enough wealth, to be called like a family business. But in the last 40 years, I think this is a larger phenomenon. After liberalization, you would have seen that how industries opened up and economies boomed. And this was the time when people who were looking to establish their business, they did phenomenal hard work involving their relatives, involving their brothers, involving people together from the family to create remarkable business models. And this is where you see multiple success stories. Even in my own father's generation, like 30 years back, 35 years back, we used to put up in a village. And it was my father's generation who moved from a village to a city. Though my father was in defense, but essentially these three brothers together, when they moved to the city, they created the business which we have today as a family business. So this particularly the last generation after the economic liberalization have seen a lot of tremendous growth in the economic development and creating these businesses. And that's how, as you rightly said, that majority of the listed companies today are also family-owned companies.
It's not just listed companies. I mean, it's essentially the various. I mean, Indian economy is not just the large, let's say the Nifty 50 or a BSE 30 kind of an index companies. Indian economy is made of hundreds and thousands and millions of small businesses. And let me take a simple example. My wife, I mean, Asha, you know her, she loves baking. I mean, she enjoys baking, and that's a passion for many, many years. And there was a favorite go-to place for her, that she found in a place in Market Yard. I don't want to name the shop, but she met this trader gentleman who started, getting bakery items for women at home to make their cake. And it's a small trading business that he started with his brother in a small shop in the middle of the city somewhere. Today that business is 25 plus years old. His two sons have diversified. They have seen that some of their products that they were trading actually have huge demand. So they have done a backward integration and set up a small scale industry, and they're manufacturing it with their own brand, and they have created a distribution system itself. So I think the success of family business in India is not just restricted to the large listed companies, but I think the small businesses, the kirana shops, I don't know, when you work with many of these, how are these smaller businesses, family businesses shaping up? What have been their experiences?
So, what you've just described right now is a situation or is a scenario which has been seen worldwide. And let me talk about this in an Indian context, because this is where we are talking about a next generation which is much more aspirational and want to accomplish a lot. And what you're seeing is today's next generation, they have grown around technology. They have grown around a startup ecosystem which has boomed in the last 20 years and 15 years largely, where you have so many unicorns coming from our country itself. And today, the younger generation has this aspiration that how can they make their mark, how they can take this family legacy to a greater extent. And this is a phenomenon you would see at a kirana store, at a grocery store, which is just right next to your door, to all the way till some of the wealthiest family in the country, where the next generation has different ideology, different aspirations, and want to leave out a different legacy altogether. Whenever I often talk about the talk with the elder generation, they say in our times we never used to have such lavish expenses on cars and houses and parties and clothes. They would never have such expenses. But today the scenario has changed. Also, this was a great belief that the earlier generation would resist taking debt. Now today you've seen that how startups pick up their own PE, and they look for the investors to invest in their company. At the same time, I think there was a great part of the business which was run through relationships. The way you connect with people, the way you serve people. Today, when it comes to today's economy, I think the younger generation wants to scale the business, use digital mediums, serve all over the country and across the world as well. So what I'm saying is that the story of every single family business changing is very true. And this also introduces a lot of dynamics about how the families come together and deal with such complexities in today's world, because father is failing to understand the ideas of son, and son completely is failing to adjust in a setup which was created by father because he's clueless there. Because one of the very simple story I would share with you, we were speaking with someone at Indore, and this kid is about 23 years old. He studied from one of the finest university in US. He comes back, his father has built a business which is 350 cr plus, and he comes back to the business, and his father asks him that, you son, come and join me in the business. So he goes to the business for the first week, and after a week he goes to his father and he says, what am I doing here? I have no role to play. What is it you want me to do? So his father tells him that this is how I learned about it. You come every day and you're going to learn and understand what's the business is about. He said, no, I can't do that for myself. I need to understand that why am I here? What is it I need to do? What is my role? So that I can focus. I can't run lost in all of this. I go to meetings, I don't understand what's happening. Senior leadership is influencing me in a very different way. So I think today the aspiration is that how can I create a significant amount of impact, either on scaling the business, either creating a brand, either talking about sustainability and impact on the ground, or either reaching to every household. How do I make all of these things possible?
Sunil, you've started this very interesting digital community called the Indian Family Business Network. What was your motivation in starting this?
Oh, this is very interesting. So this happened during the time where all of us were back home during the COVID period. And at this point of time, there was a new application which came out named as Clubhouse. So essentially, Clubhouse is an application where you can create audio interaction rooms where people can join in for conversations, and they can become a speaker or they can choose to be a listener as well. So, I was working in this space for all this time, and I was very passionate about family businesses. So I thought, and earlier it was very difficult for me to engage with anyone about family businesses because this was not a direct conversation which I was having with people. This was one platform which provided that opportunity where I can directly interact with new people and speak about this challenge. So on the platform, we started talking about the experiences and challenges of family business, what it means to be a part of family business, what are the challenges we are facing there, how is it we are dealing with our brother or a father, or what sort of complications do we face in a family business? Because essentially, family businesses are very different compared to any sort of a startup or MNC. Here, there are family members who are also working in the business. So you meet the same people as you go back home, and the people who you meet at home are the same people you meet in the business. And what this does is it creates a very different sort of a dynamic between you, because at work you're different and in family you're different. At work it's about merit and competence, and who's better. At home it's about taking care of each other, loving each other, being there for each other. So what this does is it creates a very complicated scenario. And so I started talking about these experiences on the application. And I saw a lot of members started joining for the conversation. They said, "Oh, I'm from Jaipur, I come from family business. Oh, I'm from Chennai, I come from family business. Oh, I'm from Calcutta, I come from a family business." And I'm going through the exact same scenario which you just described. So we used to speak about, the challenges of family business, what are good things we are learning from family business. What are the struggles of family business? How difficult it is for to ask your father to let go of decisions. How do you make decisions with him? How do you introduce digitization? How do you raise funds for your family? And on these subjects, when we used to talk about these cases, there were a lot of people who came up and said that we really had no idea that we could talk about family issues to someone outsider. When they would listen to the stories of other members sharing their complications after family separation, along with their father, along with their brother, a lot of other members would rise up and say that, it, I, I was not aware that others are also going through similar challenges in their family. I thought I was the only one who stuck with these challenges. I thought my father is the most difficult one, or my brother was the most difficult one. And then through the network, what I also found is a lot of next generation started connecting with people from the same industry in different cities. So there were networks which are happening from Calcutta to Nagpur to Chennai to Jaipur, and people were collaborating and coming together. So within 5 months, the community grew to more than 1,800 members, and this was phenomenal for
On
me
the Clubhouse platform.
because here on the Clubhouse platform.
Okay.
And this was really inspiring for me to see that there is a big space to talk about this. There are a lot of people who are in need of this conversation, and there is no space for them to speak about these issues, because it's very difficult to reach out to anyone outside and tell them that this is the issue I'm struggling with my father, or this is where my brother doesn't trust me, or this is where my father, my uncle doesn't approve of me, of my ideas, or when do I voice out my opinion in the family meetings or the business meetings. And during these struggles, so this is where the foundation was set. And eventually we started having conversation. We also had a conversation about women in 21st century, or a 21st century women in family business, and looking at their aspirations of joining the family business, looking at their role in the business, and what sort of complications they are having in joining the family business. So this kind of became like a big movement, and I understood that there are a lot of people, and that is where we started having more and more of these meetings. Now I'm in the phase two, where I'm planning to organize this in a better sense, provide a smaller network to people, a peer group of 7 to 8 members who can come together and really connect and share these stories with each other. So this is going to come out soon. Hopefully by the month of July or August, we will be able to, have the first round of it. But so this is where, the IFBN, or Indian Family and Business Network, came about.
So essentially, what you have set up is a digital space for the next generation people in business, whether they are men or women, to come together in small groups as per their choice. And you, as a consultant, facilitate their conversation in helping them define their challenges and helping them navigate through those challenges. I mean, have I got that right?
Yes, perfectly, yes. And the reason why we've kept it, these are some of the distinct features which are not there in the industry as of now. One is it's digital. We have a lot of in-person networks, but digital, this is first of its kind. The difference is people can make it to digital. In-person events are difficult to attend. Second, the openness. So in our groups, people find themselves in a space where they can talk about these sensitive issues.
Fair
Whereas
enough.
in-person events, it's rare to find. Yeah.
So, Sunil, on the IFBN, which is the digital community that you have set up called the Indian Family Business Network, what are the two or three things that members of family business can take away from? What is it that they can learn?
So Indian Family Business Network, first of all, it's a community which is exclusively for the family businesses, meaning members who are a part of family business, they will have a lot of value from these conversations. What is it they can take away from it? Number one is to network with people who come from similar background. Second, listen to the stories which every family businesses go through. What that does is it at least puts you at peace to recognize that you're not the only one who's stuck. And number three is through these conversations, if you surface your issues on the network, then me, along with all the members who are a part of the group, we try our best to give you an easy next step to reach towards your goal. So many times we have this conversation where, a son is failing to have a difficult conversation with his father. One of the instances where, one of the next generation decided to completely quit the business and go away from it and start working in a job because he could not sustain within the family business. So I asked him a simple question, that did you ever express this to your family, that this is where you felt hurt? And he said, no, I never expressed it to them. So I asked him, so how can you expect your family to understand your pain or your hurt if you don't even tell them about it? So this is how in many areas we have tried to rebuild the relationships, help them get more network. Network for business opportunities is another thing where people have come together from textile industries, from mobile industries to kind of work together for various opportunities.
So you
So this is a
yourself,
fabulous network. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So, you yourself come from a very large family. Why don't we kind of go there and rewind in the past and know about how has your own, experience of being a member of a very large Haryanvi family shaped you and your thoughts in doing what you're doing today?
Thank you so much for bringing that, sir. In fact, that is exactly where the journey for me started. So I come from a joint family. Uh, Here we are more than 35 members in our family. Everybody is located in the same city. And I thoroughly enjoy being a part of family. I think I'm more of a people person, so I love being around people, and family is one of the closest around me. So here, we have a family business which was started by my elder generation here in the city Gurgaon. Before that, my grandfather used to run the business in the village we used to put. And after we've come here, we have completely transformed. So earlier we were the one who used to make the jewelries, but now I think it's much more organized. We have organized retail stores around it, and we are kind of providing a ready-made jewelries to the clients and the customers. So I think of being in passion for business and then eventually to family business started there. I was just about 14 years old And I still remember the day right after my 10th standard exam on the last day, 28th of March. I was home next day morning, and my father gave me the bike keys. And I was very excited that, see, next day I've got my bike. And he said, now go to the store and get it open. So this is where, for the first time,
Okay.
so this is where, for the first time I'm introduced to the family business. He tells me, you come here, you don't need to do anything, just sit here, see what's happening around, and you can go whenever you want. So all those 3 months of holiday during summers, I used to every day in the morning go to the store, be there for 3-4 hours by lunchtime mostly, and then after lunch I would go to my friends and just have fun. But this is where I started getting introduced to the business, and I would then eventually go to the markets, manage customers, and all of that. And that is where I became really passionate about it. But on the other hand, some of the things which I didn't value earlier but recognized only in the later part of my life is what is it which was keeping our family together. And so I think this is something where I had a lot of inspiration coming from my parents, my uncles, and at the same time, my grandparents on both the sides. So I think somehow I can see that families used to have such phenomenal conduct in the earlier generations, where people, family members truly and genuinely cared about each other. One of the elements was that everybody here was striving to get onto something for a success pattern. So how three brothers came together and created a business, which is now, a very well known in the new part of the city, which is New Gurgaon. And how they created a business together by making the right decisions, by looking after each other, by helping one grow at a time, and two supporting the other. And so this was phenomenal, where I genuinely learned how to care about each other and what are the right values we need to look after. So from my family business, there was so much which I was getting in terms of my passion for business, love for the family. But at the same time, sometimes, when you're so close with such a big family, often that experience can sometimes be, can sometimes, you can have certain relationships which can become difficult. And
Mhm.
since you're young, it might be difficult for you to understand that how do you manage through that.
Correct.
So when I was young, for me to understand my relationship with some of my cousins, or even with my younger brother for that matter, was very different. Me and my younger brother, when we were young, we used to play together, but very rarely, and we were very different from each other. And that's the phenomenon you would see in the majority of the family. So he's somebody who loves painting. He is sort of a person who's a feeling person. He loves people a lot, and he takes care of the details. And he's the one who likes to keep things by himself. He's not like me, who would kind of go out and discuss with people and celebrate and be with people all the time. He likes his own time, and he likes some family common time. And whereas I am somebody who's largely in between the people, I enjoy being around with people, I'm loud. And so these were the things which were different. And initially I could not understand this. So sometimes we used to have differences. And but in my heart, there was always a longing that how do I make this relationship, much deeper and much more connected, much more strong. And this is where, I was introduced with something called ELRI, and you must be familiar with it because you were at Flame. Professor Indra Parekh used to run these, sort of human labs, something similar to Landmark, which Landmark does. And here on this platform, I expressed that how, I am longing to build this stronger relationship with my younger brother, where both of us are different, and I'm appreciating that difference, but we need to come together and appreciate that for each other. And that was the point where I recognized for myself that I think I am too demanding, and I want things, in a certain way, which is the fact which is not helping me build this relationship. So to build this relationship, somewhere I was the barrier myself. And so when I dropped off that barrier, I spoke to my brother and I told him that, I'm really sorry that I couldn't recognize these differences. I couldn't appreciate the different view. And he has such a big heart. Right at the moment, he said, "No worry, it's all okay." And
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One aspect of family business that it is the business is the family and family is the business, which means that
very true.
emotions play such a big role. And we are one society, even irrespective of intergenerational issues. We don't want to hurt anybody. So even if there is, so it's like, I don't mind undergoing pain and suffering myself. I'm okay, being the victim, but I will not cause pain or suffering to the other. Now, whilst the strength of family business is very, very clear, that the whole notion of my own personal well-being and growth will only happen if the larger entity, which is the family business, its growth and well-being is taken care of, which is perfectly fine. But in all this, there is a flip side to it, that objective, rational conversation just doesn't happen, because there's a fear of losing or breaking a relationship. So there's a flip side, and we could talk about it on the other side, but what I have also kind of learned in my coaching roles with business leaders, especially in family businesses, is there has to be a space within the family business and members of the family to have what I call it as courageous, authentic conversation. It's not man ki baat, it is dil ki baat. And we simply
Yeah.
listen and hear each other. And of course, that goes without saying. But then, in all this, there is this whole notion of community that plays a big role, right? I mean, it's, family. So I'm a member of the family. Family is a member of the community. Community is a member of the society. So this whole
Yeah.
membership on a ever expanding circle also plays a big role. So how does Sunil Soni look at himself in 21st century India? And you said a couple of times that when you and your brother were young, I think, Sunil, you are still young. You are very much young even now, because that's why you are on the Wings podcast as a young Indian. I can rephrase you that when you and your brother were kids, you had these arguments.
Yes, 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 yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
So,
yes, yes.
so how does the role of community, and which is so important, because we live in a kind of a world which keeps telling us, thanks to technology and media, that being the individualistic, automized one, that I'm not talking about I, me, myself kind of thing, but still, I have to focus on my own well-being and good, and I have to be the captain of my own ship, as a phrase. How do you see that in the context of being a member of a larger and a healthier community? How do you see that? Because that plays a big role
So
in
I
family.
think, in my view, something which is very important across this, and I'll introduce certain dimensions so that it's easier to put in a context,
Yes.
where all of these, to be able to maintain balance between all of this, is necessary. Because if you overdo either of it, then either you're left with the pain or you leave your community with the pain.
Correct.
So within family, you would see that there are three smaller circles. One is my own circle, which is how do I feel about myself, and am I happy or not happy about certain things. Then the larger circle is the family circle, where how is my happiness is impacting the family bond and relationship. And then going from this family circle, you go to the business circle, which is serving a larger community, about how my individual interest and family interest impacting the business interest. So it's important that at what times do I take care of my own feelings? Do I give up my own feelings for the betterment of a relationship in a family? And for certain times, I have to go away from the family events, skip a marriage for that matter, because I have to attend a business deal. And it is important to maintain a balance amongst this, because if you do too much of business, then you lose connections with family. If you do too much of family, you lose connection with yourself. If you do too much about yourself, you lose connection with family and business both. And the same circle stretches to the community, about how much are you ready to take from the community, where you kind of serve them your products and services and kind of go there for market opportunities, as well as how much you are ready to give back. And family businesses have done some phenomenal work around this space. Here, family businesses are driven by extremely different set of values. They are not about exploitation at all, because it is the community which has helped them grow this much, and they are very thankful to that. So I've seen some of the wealthiest family in the country doing some of the finest philanthropic work without even saying a word. So they
Correct.
would go about building temples, they would go about building schools, they would go about building hospitals, they would go, here in India, there's so much about Gauma. So they would make gaushalas, they would kind of create, you've seen those carnivals and fairs in small cities. They would go about sponsoring things like that. So I think family businesses recognize that for me to flourish, it is important that my community flourishes. But then again, there is a consistent balance among all of this. If you do too much for the community, if you go too much in philanthropic work, then how do you take care of the family and the business? So that is where, I've seen often that this sort of a charge is taken by the elder generation, which is about 75 years old, who largely put out most of their time in philanthropic work and giving back to the society. Whereas the younger generation kind of takes care of family togetherness and business. And it is the youngest most, which is, about 15 to 25 years old, which is still trying to identify their own happiness. But this doesn't remain there, because challenges could be faced by anyone. Every transition, for that matter, comes with their own challenges, where it could be difficult for anyone in the family. It could be difficult for the father or the eldest member, or anyone coming from the family itself.
No,
So
we're living in a world where, as we spoke a little earlier, that the non-family business, the chances of them surviving, beyond 20 years looks remote. What starts us as a non-family business may not exist in most parts of the world, not necessarily in India. And what you are saying through your work in the IFBN network, not within India, but globally also, I know you collaborate and work with people in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, in the US too. So in many, many ways, I think, family business, apart from it being, ticking the box on the longevity, it also many a times ticks the box on relevance. Because I think, with changing time and changing context, the business, whether it has started by the first generation, whether it's in the second or third generation, it has to be kept relevant. So I think if we were to look at this longevity and relevance as two parameters, and family businesses, not just in India, across the world, you work with people in I think in Italy too, right? You're saying somebody in Italy you were conversing with, and the
yes,
reality
yes,
there is
yes,
not very different. Is that correct?
yes, 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 yes. So I think in terms of relevance, one way is to look at the relevance for the business opportunities.
Yes.
And the other way is to keep it relevant for within the family, to have the family succeed, and to kind of become successful as a family business itself. So I would say phenomenon which is noticed around family businesses globally is that family businesses have been the foundation for any economy across the globe. And this is where most of the economies thrive. And this is where you have done some remarkable work for the community. Now, to keep it relevant, it is now in the last 30 years where there has been a lot of struggle. As I spoke about the differences of aspiration between the younger generation or the elder generation. So many times you would hear that Italy has a family, or Europe has many families which are in their 12th or 16th generation.
Correct.
I was speaking with this gentleman, and we were talking about that what is it which makes these families successful for so many generations together. So what I understood is that, one, they were very clear about succession rules. So here in India, like the wealth is transferred to the sons, likewise in Europe, most of the wealth was transferred to the sons. I'm talking about 40 years back. And so much so that it was only given to the elder son, not even the younger son. So it created a very clear structure for the father to hand over all the skills and the wealth to the eldest son, who's going to take care of the family further. And so where you would see families in their 12th or 16th generation, you would see that before the last 3-4 generation, essentially it was a transition between the father and the son. And, just got a call. Father and the elder son. And then now, since the phenomenon has changed, now there are shares which are, given to the sons, all the sons for that matter, and even a part of wealth goes to the daughters. And this is changing globally now. But earlier, this transition was much more simpler. Here in India, you would speak to many people, and people, especially owners in the elder generation would say, we would never speak in front of our father. Whatever he would say, we would just simply go and abide by it. We would never raise questions. Now look at the generation. They even dare to question us.
No, I mean, that's a good sign, isn't it? I mean, what was simply, blindfolded reverence, which was, probably founded more on fear than kind of love. I think it has changed for good, according to me, that there is a healthy conversation across generations. And I will bring in a lot of women here because I know second generation, third generation, young girls are coming into business and they are having this, phenomenal, dialogue capability with their earlier generation. So I think clearly what one is trying to say is, whilst, in family business, the business goals are extremely important, but the individual goals, aspirations, values is also important. And I think what is extremely important is to create spaces for dialogue for issues which are not only around what we agree on and what we are aligned on, but what we disagree and what we are misaligned on too. So essentially, it's not about simply, fix what is broken, but build what is working. And I would like to believe that there is as much in the family business that is working today, which needs to be celebrated. And I'm sure you and your digital community of the Indian Family Business Network will not only offer, discover and offer solutions to problems and challenges, but also discover and celebrate the successes which are very much right there. So I think this has been really, really a very different kind of conversation of Wings podcast, which we have never had before. And I really, really thank you, Sunil, for coming on the show and sharing your personal experiences on this very, very interesting and fascinating subject. So on this note, as we end our conversation, just wanted to know, Sunil, what do you feel right now? And what is it that you're saying to yourself?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, sir. I really enjoyed this conversation. And this conversation is certainly the need of the hour. And with this conversation today, I think I genuinely feel that it's not only about the challenges, but there are so many good sides of family business, and there are so many things which we learn from them, and we could learn further from them. That the scope is enormous. So I think family businesses are here to stay, and they're going to succeed for many, many generations now. So with that, I think this has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you.
I mean, not only family businesses are here to stay, they are here to thrive, thanks to some amazing entrepreneurial initiatives like yours of the Indian Family Business Network. So I wish you good luck and have a good time ahead with all the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75@gmail.com. Thank you.